Hello, welcome to DeKalb Talks Tourism. We have a special guest who I've gotten to know now for a few months, and welcome Nichelle Gainey, and Nichelle with an N, not an M. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, James, for having me.
So, Nichelle, I know some of your background and all, but tell our listeners, who you are, where you came from, and your background and things like that.
Well, James, I'm a military brat. I always like to start off with that. I was very fortunate enough to be raised by a mother who attended Spelman College in the 70s and a father that was an enlisted soldier. So they raised their sons to be saluted and daughters to be respected. So
Nice.
I have three brothers who are all commissioned officers, and two are currently serving in very critical areas of the military. So my life has always been a life of a military child, born into it, traveled into it. So it's always been a sense of discipline. And so, and some people would say, who were some of your competition and competitors growing up? And I would always say it was my brothers and my sister. So, and I was very fortunate enough to, who I looked up to were my parents.
So, we're going to be talking a lot about sports. How did you get the sports bug and get so influential in the sports world?
Wow. I think the sports bug comes from having a very active family. My father always believed, who was also played football before he was in the military. My mother was an avid supporter of, on the military bases, they had what we call DYA, Division Youth, DYS, Division Youth Services. And it's the same elk of what Shaquille O'Neal came out of. He played in the same type of environment. So it always kept us active, and it also kept us competitive. And I remember living in Europe, specifically in Germany, my parents would always sign us up for different activities, and there were never enough women or girls to play on an all-girls team. So I would always have to play with the mixed group, and I would sometimes be the only young girl or female on the team, and I would have to compete with my brothers. And I think in competing against them, I remember one year I was playing and I played extremely well, and my brother was on the team, and I was able to make the all-star team and he didn't. And so we would tease each other even to this day about when you talk about competition, no greater competition is within your inner circle and your family.
Yeah.
So the bug of athleticism came from my family, supported by my mother, who tried to turn me into a ballerina, but she realized that I had more fun being on the field. And I think in that was, before Title IX. And so I don't think my father ever thought that I would be a serious sports contender. And he always would say, you know what, and he called me Nikki. He would always say, focus on your academics, because there's not a place for women in sports. And so when I was growing up, watching sports and seeing someone, and I always say representation matters. And me watching Kennedy was always something that I would say, I see women, and now here I am. Hopefully, I could be an example for a young girl.
So, what sport did you play?
I played all sports. I played baseball. I played basketball. I played softball. I ran track. I swam. I was an avid swimmer. And I even ice skated. When you're in Germany, there was a lot of activities. And I even played marbles, and I felt like I was the queen of the marbles until I played against my brothers, right? So I played anything you can think of, flag football, now, which is an Olympic sport. So I played very versatile, but I think swimming was always something that was individually that I excelled at. And I ended up doing that in college.
Okay, so you swam in college.
I did.
So did you go to Spelman too?
No, I was accepted to Spelman, and received a call from from my cousin who was attending Alabama A&M, and so I decided to attend, and I was able to receive a scholarship, swim scholarship, because they had a swim team. And I remember when I turned down my acceptance to Spelman, my mom didn't speak to me for 7 days.
Oh. Alabama and A&M, where is that?
That's in Huntsville, Alabama.
Okay, okay.
You know, where the military based, where I was born on the military base there, Redstone Arsenal.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother grew up in Huntsville, and I'm fifth generations of Alabama A&M.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
It is very cool.
So my side of the family, with my wife's side, is the split family because of the Alabama Auburn fans.
Oh, wow.
So it depends on which side of it on you are there. So okay, so tell us, you got very, very involved in sports from a big level, as in FIFA and the Olympics and all that. So tell us a little bit how that occurred.
Well, it occurred early on. I was actually accepted to medical school and deferred my acceptance, was in Florida, and started teaching. I started teaching AP chemistry. My background was chemistry, and started teaching. And in teaching, I started coaching.
So I should ask, what was your degree in then?
Oh, yeah. My degree was in chemistry and biology.
Okay.
Yes.
I was trying to figure that one out.
Yeah, so I always thought I was going to be a medical doctor. I think that's what, my father aspiration was for me, and that's what because again, I didn't think there was a place for, I always loved sports. Sports was always a hobby. It was never anything that I thought could be a career. And so I was I excelled in the sciences, and I remember being in high school, my brothers were extremely smart. And I would always get put up into AP classes because how well my brothers would do. And I remember in a geometry class, someone asked me, is there a problem? Is there something going on? Because, your brothers, they did so well. And I would look at them and say, I'm not my brothers, And so I struggled in those areas. But when I got to college and I was able to focus specifically in a discipline, I excel. And not only that, but having a discipline of scheduling practice in school and making sure that I had the right type of friends around me, I really excelled from being a C student to being a exceptional student in college. And so how did I get in the sports area? So when I decided that in education and in teaching sports, I remember an instructor asking me that I had a couple of kids that were not high performers, and they wanted to be in my chemistry class. And there were some things that I was doing, I would always do to try to help my kids understand more. I would always incorporate the science of sports into incorporating the interest into learning. And in doing that, the principal at the time asked me, he says, what are you doing in your classroom that you're having HD kids that are not high performers asking to be in your classroom? And I at the time I said, am I in trouble? Because I was coaching at the time. And so he recommended me for a statewide program. And the statewide program, they were trying to get kids to learn more than 40 minutes, like do an hour or so, hour and 20-minute courses or something like that. I can't recall. But they were trying to figure out how can you keep a kid's attention, and whatever you do in your classroom, would you be a part of a team for the state of Florida to kind of try to incorporate these ideas. And so in that, in doing that, someone thought I was a person in marketing.
Ah, okay.
And they thought, okay, well, here she is explaining the concept to everyone else. And I've always felt like in presenting in college, I was always able to present well. And so they just assumed that I was a marketing person presenting concepts on behalf of someone in science.
Not a bad thing.
Not a bad thing, but, and push comes to shove, kind of like fake it till you make it, kind of, where everyone thought I was in marketing, and then I realized, well, maybe I need to get a degree in an MBA emphasizing marketing because I was embarrassed to tell someone I was a chemist because I didn't want anyone to think I didn't know anything about sports.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So how did you come about creating your company? Tell us about your company.
Silverstone International definitely was created with my girlfriends and I thought we had the skill sets. One was an attorney, I was MBA, and another had her PhD. And we thought, well, let's create to do a side gig to where we can travel, and they never had the energy to put the energy into it. But I started the company, maintained it. I had an opportunity working with the NCAA. I was on the site selection committee for soccer, and I just had had it, and I had an opportunity to go over to Germany. I was invited to Germany by Franz Beckenbauer, who was chairman of the 2006 FIFA World Cup. And when I got there, I kept thinking, like, I need to start a company. And then my mother said, well, don't you have a company? Didn't you start a company? I said, yeah, but that's for vacation. That's a vacation company. And that was started in 2004. And so I end up incorporating that and using that concept in 2006 at the 2006 FIFA World Cup as I worked on the logistics side. And there birthed a company that I had, and I thought that I was going to work for ESPN one day, and then end up using that company to kind of start my sport career.
Well, I'm going to have to ask on the show because I've wondered this the whole time. Silverstone.
Where
did you get the name?
I wanted something that resonated, that showed strength and power, and not gender specific.
Okay.
And when I thought about that, I thought about a rock, and I said, instead of saying rock, I said, a stone. I wanted to build a company that could stand on its own when it was mentioned. And so, and I thought about the minerals and the stone and the earth, and so that's when I came up with Silverstone, and I just stuck with it.
Very cool, because I have wondered that for the several months that I've known you. Like,
really?
Where's the company
I liked
name?
platinum, and I liked rock, and I used to collect rocks when I was younger.
Titanium stuff.
Yeah. And living in Germany, I was very, very active in the quarries, and so I've always wanted a representation that I wanted a company that signified strength and was unbreakable. And so that's kind of where I came up with Silverstone.
I like that because I was curious.
Yeah, and the two S's are capital.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, I always see it as an email, but yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Is it one word or is it?
It's one word and
two caps.
And two caps. And international is always something that was born in me as a military brat, that I traveled globally. And anything that I did, I've always had an interest on beyond borders, outside of the United States.
Well, tell us, you have your company and your home here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So how did you come to Atlanta?
I came to Atlanta to be closer to family. Unfortunately, I lost my sister to breast cancer, and she had a younger son. And I said, only a sister can tell a son about his mother. And so I felt it was at a critical time in his age for me to be present. And I was at the top of my game in my career in New York, in Alabama, big fish in a small pond in Alabama. In New York, I felt like opportunities were presenting itself in every corner and turn, because it was a city that if you had the strength and stamina and relationships, you can definitely go far. And then I had to take a pause. And in taking a pause in 2000, I lost my sister in 2012. And I thought I could do it New York, L.A., and come lay eyes and then go back. But as he was growing, I realized that there was a need for me to be present. And so I decided to come to Atlanta to be closer. So I had to streamline my business a bit. And now he is a sophomore at Auburn University, making straight A's, a pre-med student. Very proud of him. And I feel that my presence here was meaningful, and it was what was needed, and there's no regrets. And so
Well, the good thing is you're here for the family. He's what, 2 hours away?
2 hours
Like
away, but you know what? Now they're getting older. I'm not as cool as I used to be.
but you're still 2 hours away if they need you.
If they need me, correct.
And then the great thing with living here with the airport is you can get to L.A., New York, and everywhere so simple.
That's correct.
So that's another advantage. Well, we love that you're here because I've actually heard about you for what, close to 6-8 months?
Yeah.
Because every time I'd go into a meeting and be like, we would like to have her at part of our sports tourism panel.
Yeah.
And then I'd get another, like to have her, I'm talking today at 2. Then I got a text that you could be available for our dinner the night before our sports tourism panel. And that's how we actually got together. So I'm so excited you're in Atlanta. I'm so excited we got connected. So we had an awesome panel on sports overall, but then we honed in on FIFA.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about that, your experience with FIFA.
Well, I've had a great experience with the people that I met through FIFA, not just FIFA, ESPN, Disney, on the media side. So my company, Silverstone International, is a media film sports company. And some of the things that we do, we were a part of ESPN's first launch of 30 for 30. It was called Black Magic, how African Americans entered into the NBA, and it tells a story with the producer Dan Flores, one award-winning producer Dan Flores. And so that was my first taste with my company that I started, leaving collegiate sports, having the relationship in NCAA with a lot of these folks migrating into magazines, into Fox, into ESPN. And so my name was mentioned when Dan Flores was looking for the right person to work with that had the institutional knowledge about historically black colleges and universities and HBCUs, and talking about how that migrated in. And so in that, ESPN called me, hired me to work with Dan Flores to kind of get this information out in a way that Dan Flores wanted it to get out, because he felt like at that time, ESPN did not have the right institutional knowledge that could talk about historically black colleges, university. And again, I'm 5 generations. Mother went to Spelman, military brat. So I was able to really connect with Dan about how he wanted to tell his story. And it ended up being one of the biggest viewerships on ESPN. So in getting with that, you're talking about me working with the NCAA, working on this soccer selection committee, having the relationship with ESPN. ESPN bought the rights for the World Cup for 2006 to 2014, and having my name already out there as someone who could execute. And at that time, I was a boutique company, a small company, trying to find our way. Really unsure what to ask for financially. We just knew that I was making more money than I made working for an athletic conference. And so having that start and having an opportunity of meeting Franz Beckenbauer, who they call the Kaiser, one of the greatest sportsmen outside of, to me, him and Pele were 2 of the greatest sports icon in the soccer world that I had an opportunity to meet. And having him vouch for me, and having ESPN, recommended me and help in working with them on migrating through the FIFA network, allowed me to really get a footing in working with the committee as the 2010 FIFA World Cup, as South Africa was going to host, trying to, they lost the bid for 2006, and they were up for 2010. and being a part of that and watching them win that and being there and working on the 2010 FIFA World Cup, really submitted myself in a relationship with some of the folks from FIFA, and traveling, having an opportunity to travel to 34 countries in Africa, 60 cities in Europe, and being a very integral part of making sure that from the media standpoint, and also having an opportunity to leverage some really strong and significant relationships that I have to this day with the organization.
Very cool. Interesting. I didn't know the part about South Africa, so that's very neat.
Yeah.
So we're excited you're on this committee. So some of the things, can you maybe talk about to our viewers or listeners what FIFA does for an area? I mean, we've heard through the Atlantic Sports Commission and all, but personally, what's your experience of what FIFA can do for an area like a DeKalb County?
Wow, I think there's a lot going on. You know, the footprint of when you're talking about the world's largest event, right? And just the magnitude of your viewership. When you have an opportunity of an organization of an estimate of a 3.5 or 3.4 billion reach, right? So, you're talking about in the United States, we think football,
right?
American football, Super Bowl is the biggest thing that's ever happened. And so just to give an opportunity for your listeners and viewers, when you're talking about a Super Bowl, you're talking in comparing to a FIFA World Cup, you're talking about 200 Super Bowls happening at one time. So you think about the magnitude of what a Super Bowl does for a city, right? What a Super Bowl does for a city of Atlanta, and in the spillover of what it has or what it can do for a DeKalb County. And I've always said to you, and I said it on the podcast, I always said one of the greatest assets that I see for DeKalb County is your PDK airport. And I had, when the U.S. was bidding for 2022 FIFA World Cup and the FIFA committee was flying in to meet with folks, they were flying into PDK, right? So in flying into PDK, we never, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't know I was flying into DeKalb County.
We're going to try to fix that problem with our committee.
I thought I was flying into, and it wasn't until I was flying in. I flew in that day to meet you guys for dinner, and having an opportunity to have I call it a Michelin star dinner at a private airport. And you then told me the history about PDK. And I think I told you, I was like, I always thought I was flying into Atlanta,
right?
And I think for me, when you talk about that and you talk about the planes that fly in for a Super Bowl, and I think I mentioned that on your podcast, you're thinking about 1,500 private planes flying to the airport around the world going to a Super Bowl. And so then again, I tell you, the World Cup is 200 Super Bowls happening at one time. So the magnitude of that and what that can do for PDK and what that can do for DeKalb County, the opportunity is great, right?
Yeah.
So my father would always say to me, and I just relate that to you guys that discovered DeKalb and DeKalb tourism. He would always tell me I would wait for my brothers, at school, and he would say, and I was so upset because they had left me. And that was a lesson my father, he taught me. He says, you can't sit around waiting for someone to help you. He said, you got to be proactive, because I was sitting in a corner. My brothers said they didn't see me. They thought I was gone, and they left. So in other words, you got to continue being proactive. You got to continue moving. And if you're moving in a direction, what I would say of greatness or with great assets, and I always say when I come to DeKalb County, I look at all the boutique restaurants. You have some amazing chefs,
Yes.
and I think one of the things that I have discovered about DeKalb is, I'm a foodie. And so is the food. And I am always so surprised of the presentation, as if I'm in some of the best, finest restaurants, and you stumble on it right here in DeKalb County, right?
Yep.
Because you never think about it. So just to make a reference of what I was saying about, you know, waiting for someone to save you. I always say, instead of waiting for someone to tell you what to do, you got to be moving forward, right? And I think you're doing that from a tourism standpoint. That's kind of how we met each other, because you were
Right.
moving, right?
Right.
If you were not moving forward in different segments and in different relationships, we would have never met.
Very true.
And so one of the things that I say about DeKalb is that you have something special. Instead of waiting for someone to say, just keep doing what you're doing to promote it, you're going to find out that people are going to come find you and ask, how can I help you? And how can we move this along? And so one of the things that I think is good and what I think is unique about me is that you have someone with institutional knowledge who have had an opportunity to have worked 4 World Cups and have been a part of 4 World Cups, and even the one in Qatar, which all 4 are very different, right?
Yes.
And they all bring something with some nostalgia. Like when I talk about Germany was one that created the concept of the FIFA, of the fanfare,
Okay.
Fan Fest. And I remember that was not a priority for FIFA at the time. FIFA was like, okay, we have our sponsors, we're making a lot of money. And
Look at
and
that
so
crowd.
That's the Fan Fest, right? So what Germany realized is that they had more requests for tickets than they had tickets. So they saw, and they always consider themselves as innovators, right? They're the best of the best. They create innovation, and so in that, they said they wanted to do something there. And so FIFA was like, okay, you guys do that, but you can't have our sponsors. You can't do this. And they were like, okay, we don't need your sponsors. So when you're looking at a country that has really thrived off of concerts, off of doing Oktoberfest, all they said they needed was screen, food, drinks, and people, because everyone can't go to a game, right? And our people, everybody can't afford the tickets, because at that point the ticket prices will increase. And they found out that one of the most successful events was the Fan Fest. And I was able to go to the one in Stuttgart, and I was able to do the games that I didn't go to, and I was able to do the one in Frankfurt, the Rhine River, and I never seen anything like it before. So now FIFA has now if you notice, it's now the FIFA Fan Fest, which is controlled by FIFA and the sponsors and the resources. And so I would say it's because of Germany, which created another opportunity for revenue stream that no one else was thinking about.
Very nice. Very neat, because I know downtown Atlanta is going to have like the official Fan Fest. But there's watch parties, even like, I believe some of our cities here in DeKalb does Atlanta United watch parties.
That's correct. Yeah.
So you just think about what can be done with FIFA,
Yeah.
with the World coming. But one of the things you said is we really are looking at honing in on PDK with the 3 fixed base operators to let people know that when they do land, they're in DeKalb County.
Yeah.
So that's part of what you've really brought to the table, and we're the committee we've now formed that you're on is looking at how we can utilize PDK, but not just with FIFA, but just think about, you flew in here before individually, and then with Super Bowl in 28 and all these different big events, how can we propel this continuously?
Yeah, there's a need. Anytime you create a need, in what's going on right here in Discover, as I would call it, Discover DeKalb, which I am also discovering. And you're looking at the type of people that are coming in. And if you just kind of think about what Germany did in 2006 that was not done before, they increased their revenue by having an additional 21 million fans attending these Fan Fest. and in different areas across Europe, right? And so I think that's what DeKalb should kind of prioritize themselves in looking at, because FIFA has rules, right? The host committee has rules, but there's still things that you're doing from the state of Georgia that benefits the tourism. Attracting, and your job is, one of the things that you do well is attracting attention to DeKalb. And that doesn't stop what you're doing, and you don't have to wait. And that's kind of what I'm saying. You don't have to wait to continue doing what you're doing. You can still wait for the rules and the specific things that you can acquire that is FIFA sponsored and mandated. But DeKalb County it goes 24 hours, 24/7.
Right.
And so you're, like I said, I just say continue doing what you're doing, with your podcast, with your forum. People will come and find you.
Well, what's interesting is we are one of the most culturally diverse counties in Georgia.
Yeah.
So, and then you've got Buford Highway, which is the international cultural dining experience that runs through DeKalb County.
Yes.
So we really have the assets, and we're now as a bureau planning on getting internationally involved with different techniques to be able to talk with the international visitors coming in. So I think that it's really an interesting thing. But with that, you brought up to me one of maybe the hardest and strangest interviews you've had. So you were you were doing an interview in Arabic, right?
Oh, yes. Well, So I was a part of when Qatar was trying to, get people from, North America to come. So they reached out to me and asked me to be a part of the interview, because and also too, I did actually 3 interviews with them, but the last one I thought was very interesting is when they found out of when they selected the host cities, and they did that selection they did the big production in Los Angeles, which is my heart goes out to those who have lost their homes.
Yes.
I have very dear friends who were a part of the Canada LA 2028 Olympic bid with me, who have lost everything. And my heart goes out. And the chairman, Casey Wasserman, who is just a phenomenal individual, who was the one that asked me to be a part of the LA 2028 board of directors. So my heart goes out to him. So the place where they did the announcement, I think that's also, I'm not sure if it's even standing still. So I was a part of an interview which was done in Arabic, and with one of the largest, it's the largest Arabic station. It's called 7, and so listening to him and it was live, and then having the person in my ear translating in Arabic and then English. So that was probably one of the most difficult, but I also said it was exciting too, because that's the kind of thing that the United States is welcoming, right?
Yes.
And I think when you look at the diversity within DeKalb County, I think that's something that shows representation. Representation matters, and it also shows the opportunities of stakeholders, investors that will be coming to Georgia, the state of Georgia, Atlanta, and spilling over into the cities like Fayetteville, DeKalb County. And I do know that USA Soccer, I don't represent them, but they, one of the things that made them a part of what made it appetizing for them to select Georgia and Atlanta as their national training facility is the diversity and what it brings, and Arthur Blank's commitment into creating and in supporting that a diversity training innovation center that's coming here as well, that he's has said that he will put up his own money to make sure that happened. And so there's a lot of exciting things about, what's going on here in DeKalb that, that from 5 months, to the 2025 FIFA Club World Cup to 18 months leading into the 2026 FIFA World Cup. I think it's an exciting time. I think it's an exciting time for DeKalb to talk about its diversity, and especially
Right.
when everyone else is not talking about it. Representation matters. People are spending money in DeKalb County, and investors are looking for opportunities to be a part of something that is open and welcoming, and that that represents them. And I said, I think that's kind of, if DeKalb County had hired me as its consultant, a plug for Silverstone, I would definitely be looking at that. That's something that you don't have to wait for anyone to tell you if you can
Right.
talk to an investor to look at all this amazing opportunities and land that you have that can turn into jobs for your constituents here, and opportunity to grow it into a very powerful economic developed city that can stand on its own.
Yes, very, very true. And we're excited that this is happening because this has put the Convention and Visitor Bureau for DeKalb a very different area that we're moving into. So we're excited about that. We do a lot of sports, but now to be able to really try to attract the fans of the European and the South American and South Korean teams would be a phenomenal change for this whole environment here. And it just does embrace the already cultural diversity that we have.
Yeah.
So we're excited about all that.
Yeah, and it's exciting about what your legacy will be, right?
Right.
And I think when I talk about legacy, some people internalize it, and they may say, my legacy is intact. I'm good. I can run 5 times and win. Okay, that's great. But the legacy of the games is not about one person, right?
Right.
The legacy of the games is about the growth of the game and continue fostering it to be something bigger and better. And each place that I have had an opportunity to witness, like when I witnessed Germany, and it's what the fanfare and innovation created for Europe and what it continues to do. And when it moved to South Africa, it created a burst of an infrastructure that was never there before. And if they didn't have the World Cup, they may not have the trains, the fast trains, the technology, the infrastructure. And I know there's still the energy sector is still something that is something that is being worked on. But if you look at that and you look at some of the safest places to go to set up a business, right, that has everything you need, South Africa created that model during the 2010 FIFA World Cup and has built some of the richest middle class that it's ever had because of the offspring of what had happened with international investors coming into the country. And then you look at the struggles that Brazil put on and these are all people, great World Cups, right? One of the best World Cups you've ever seen, and that people talked about the crime rate in South Africa, and they completed a World Cup that's one of the most successful World Cups in history. And then you go to Brazil, the infrastructure. They had challenges about the economics, about the stadiums. And then you go on to what Russia was able to do with its technology. I remember the face reading, the technology, your ticket, once you scanned your ticket, when you talk about AI revolution that happened, it bursted, with what Russia was able to collect that data from every person that entered that wanted to go to the game. So when my ticket was scanned, my photo showed up on the screen.
Make sure you and it
Yeah,
were the
that
same.
the ticket matched the person coming in, and they were able to monetize and monitor that. So how much data of individuals, when we talk about the people that travel. We talked about 21 people attended just the Fan Fest. All these people, in order to enter into the country, they had to submit their likeness, their image, and then associated with. So every ticket that was purchased was an association to that individual.
Well, Brain USA must be going crazy because they're funded through the visa fees.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. I don't know much about that, but I can only just tell you what was required of me to attend the games, and then it was the same. And then you look at the uniqueness of what Qatar was able to do during the midst of COVID.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So again, they built and their legacy is the sustainability. They built a stadium out of crates that could be taken down. They get seats that can be shipped to different folks, and also one of the stadiums turned into an education center and another hospital, shopping. So they were able to repurpose.
Very sustainable.
Yeah, repurpose because the challenges that Brazil has. So each country provided a very unique opportunity of excitement, of challenges and growth, right? And so now, looking at, we lost a bid for 2022, right? USA. Mexico decided that they were going to go after 2026, and they collaborated by bringing in Canada and USA to make it a very strong bid. Justino Campion, who was the president of Mexico at the time, was a brilliant mind and still is a brilliant mind who, could have carried it on his own, but he knew in order for it to be something that could be great, he incorporated, which are considered North America,
Right.
which is CONCACAF, and which is members of CONCACAF, that is slated to be probably the highest, I'm predicting one of the highest generated revenue games because the infrastructure is already there. So we didn't have to, there's nothing that most of these countries all had to build infrastructure. And so one of the things we may have on the infrastructure side may be from the migration, right? What is needed to enhance the experience? So what is it to enhance the airport, right? I'm sure that the airport is probably preparing itself for the type of fans and folks that will be coming into the United States. And with Atlanta being the busiest airport in the world, that's going to be a focal point of making sure that it's the safest, airport in the world. And so I think the strategy, security, all of those things are something that, the city of Atlanta is aware of because they've hosted some big events, but nothing like the World Cup, and Olympics is nothing like the World Cup.
And so that's what people don't understand.
Super Bowl is nothing like the World Cup and its fans. Nothing like it.
I say I have not experienced it, but I've been in enough meetings to understand that you can't compare how you handle a Super Bowl with how you handle World Cup. Even from a hotel, how you handle a Super Bowl NFL team to how you handle a actual FIFA club team.
Wow,
So-
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And, and a lot of people always ask me, why Atlanta? Why anywhere else? And I remember early on, Ambassador Young would always say, Nichelle, you belong here in Atlanta. You should, you need to think about coming to move to Atlanta. And he and I would see each other internationally. Either it'll be at South Africa's head of state inauguration, right? I had traveled to 4 continents in 5 days, and I was in Brazil when I found out that Nelson Mandela passed away, and his grandsons were at the draw. And I remember flying in to get clothes, and then I was going to just attend the funeral that they were having for him in the United States to pay the memorial for him, and Ambassador Young was doing that, and I was at the cathedral, the same cathedral where Jimmy Carter had his had his services. And I remember being there, and I was exhausted. When I tell you I was exhausted. And I was like, that was my life. I lived on a plane, on a plane. And so I remember walking up to him afterwards, and the ambassador of South Africa was there. And I asked him, I said, Ambassador Young, are you going to be attending the funeral? And he said, if I had young legs, I would be there. And he said, and Nichelle, if you are invited to attend, you should go. And I remember when he said that, my whole body just was like, oh my God, I got to get on a plane this evening to get over there. And it was because of him, because I was invited by the government of South Africa. I was invited by the ANC, and I had a personal invitation from the family, which allowed me to attend the private burial and attend his funeral, which was only allowed to 3,000. The burial was only allowed to 500. And here I am, a part of history. I am, traveling with the Premier of Hawktain, following the casket all the way into his home,
Wow.
And for me to see the line, I would call it the line of honor of everyone, I said, this is what it must have felt like when he was released from prison. You can't find a leader as selfless as Madiba when you find out that my time has expired, it's time for someone else to lead, and he walks away from greatness, and he was able to bring people together through sports, right?
Wow, yeah.
And so for me to have experienced that, and for the relationship, I realized at that moment really pushed me to kind of say, I got to do better by being in Atlanta, do more in Atlanta. And one of the things that I say about Atlanta, I always say Atlanta produces some of the most brilliant mayors. And when I say brilliant mayors that know how to lead in crisis. That's a difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
And so when I never met Maynard Jackson, but I've met, his daughter, and and I've seen the documentary, and I've seen the influence that he has had on this community. And so I just said, I have no doubt that Atlanta will be great at it. I have no doubt with the incoming CEO of DeKalb County.
Yes.
I had an opportunity to meet her, which I mentioned to you. Just so impressed by her leadership and what she's going to do for DeKalb County.
We are so excited with her taking off.
Yeah, and I was just like, it was just like a breath of fresh air coming into a room, and just getting a snippet of the ideas and what the city of Atlanta is doing. I have no doubt that together this is going to be something great for not just the state of Georgia and the surrounding cities, but I also think it's going to be great for DeKalb County.
Definitely. I mean, was a breath of fresh air. She's very economic development oriented. She's very culturally oriented, art oriented, so sports oriented. So I mean, it's a win-win-win for DeKalb County. And she already had one of her opening events that was with the mayor of Atlanta and her and a few other people. So I mean, she's really out there already reaching across borders to our big city.
Oh wow. Well, I just, like I said, I just want to be involved in any way I can. I know I'm going to do a lot on this committee, but I always think it's very important to lean on institutional knowledge wherever I can provide, lessons learned. I'm sure, yesterday and today, the 2026 FIFA the host cities were all convened in Miami, and so they will be able, I would think, in the next week or so, put together an opportunity to come back what they've gathered and share that knowledge. I'm hoping they share it with everyone involved, so you can take advantage of what's coming up in 5 months, which is a FIFA Club World Cup, and then take advantage of what's getting ready to happen in 18 months, the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
You know, the nice thing with the committee, we have this strategic planning committee, which we're still coming up with a name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't have to just we can start it with, of course, Club Cup, really push FIFA World Cup, but then we can continue on with the Super Bowls and all the other major events. And who knows if Atlanta's not going to go after the Olympics again.
Well, I think if you think about it, you know, if you look at, there is no major international event that has happened in the city of Atlanta or in the state of Georgia since the Olympics. And when was the Olympics? That's about...
Was it 96?
Yeah, so we're looking at 30 years later from hosting Olympics, 30 years later hosting the World Cup. So to me, after you host a World Cup, you can host some major international events. So just looking at the span of 30 years and then the opportunity to continue growing on that. And I think you have to have someone with the insight and knowledge, and which I always say institutional knowledge, and the relationship, stakeholders relationship, to can really push opportunities that you don't have to wait for another 30 years, right? You know, right. And so that's what my hope is, you know, and watching the growth of what foreign investment can do for a city. I'm excited to see what that is. And I'm also excited about the lasting legacy, you know, that's going to be left behind after the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
So that's what's going to be interesting. Are we going to have a legacy? We don't really have to build buildings, which is nice, but we can have a very strong legacy of the international influences, like you said, left from companies coming into the area.
Yeah, and also, too, build a soccer stadium, its own stadium. You know, I think that could be a phenomenal legacy that could be left behind after such an, and then also too maybe having more than one soccer, you know, one MLS team in Georgia, right? You know, and I think having the facility to be able to attract that, and also too, one of the biggest things that I'm a big proponent of is women's sports. You know, seeing the growth of women's soccer and professional women's soccer. Coming to Georgia and also coming to Atlanta, bursting from what's getting ready to happen in the resources. So there is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of need, and women and girls, the growth of that. You know, if you look at AAU, you look at USA soccer clubs. Women's soccer has always, especially in the South, has always been dominant. If you look at USA women's national team, has always been one of the most exciting tournaments to watch for me from the U.S. And the talent there is just unprecedented. And I think they showcased that talent, which I have always seen, but I think it was nationally televised in 2015 in Canada, where they had the highest viewership that any women's sports have ever had, that really started the question about how much the women should be paid. And it also started a conversation of making sure that these women receive fair payment, fair equitable payment for what they're doing.
Right.
So I think it's an exciting time. And I think for someone like me who have seen it and watched it from a collegiate standpoint, and I remember when I was working, I thought I was one day going to be a GM or president or an owner of an NFL team. And I said, in order to do that, I have to understand how it works. And I've always wanted to be on the football committee. And it was never sexy to be a part of, the woman being a part of it. And so I would always get, you do soccer, when no one was talking about that. And I'm just glad that, soccer was an opportunity, which is what around the world they call football.
Right.
That was something that I was not excited about, when I was on the NCAA committee for the soccer selection committee for collegiate. But I learned so much that has definitely has been a source of my foundation as I move around now, and I am just thankful, to Dr. James Frank, who was the first African American NCAA commissioner. He was interim at the time, and he was also the SWAC commissioner, who referred me because he had the relationship with the NCAA that she will be good on that committee, and because of that, I've always been a strong proponent for Title IX. I've always been a strong proponent for women's sports, girls. And so I'm just excited about what this opportunity for hosting such a magnitude, one of the biggest sporting events in the world, what it's going to do for young girls and women here in DeKalb County, in the state of Georgia, and also the city of Atlanta.
That's brought another agenda for our committee is what's the female football, soccer aspect that we can produce. That's a good one.
That's a great, and also too from a tourism standpoint.
Right.
If you look at, I remember after the USA Women won the World Cup, they came to Legion Field in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was at the game, and I was just like, okay, at the game. They had over 60,000 young girls from all over. They came in from Georgia. They came from Alabama. They came from Tennessee. And at that moment, I was like, this is much bigger, and they were paying the revenue. They were paying top dollars for tickets because the girls were big fans. And I said to myself then, when people start looking at the value of what, from a professional standpoint of investing in women's sports, it's a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's only going to go up.
That's exactly right. It's only going up.
Well, we appreciate you being on the show. We've been here almost an hour. Is there any closing remarks or stories or anything before we close?
You know what? I'm just, I am really thankful that I did not say no to being a part of your podcast.
Oh no, me too. And
so I didn't, when I
it was short because you literally got here and 2 hours later came to dinner.
Yeah, I landed and I was like, I was going to cancel, and then I said, the opportunity to talk about something I love, and because most of my friends are like, yeah, I'm tired of talking to sports and so I decided, it's like, let me just come over. And in discovering, if you want to tell me what I loved about being in DeKalb County is that I learned that PDK was in DeKalb.
Right.
And the restaurant, what's the name of the restaurant again?
57 Fighter Squadron.
57 Fighter Squadron is one of the best restaurants that I have. Well, you got so many great ones, but it was a pleasant surprise to really dine with you guys in a very casual dining setting, but with Michelin starred food and drinks. And so I just want to tell you, thank you for inviting me. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of that. And I'm just excited to be a part of all the new people that I've met through your relationships about what we're going to discover together for DeKalb.
Definitely. Well, thank you for making the decision to come and then being on our committee to move us forward. And please tune in again. We'll probably have you back on the show for sure. So tune into other DeKalb Talks Tourism podcast. Thanks.